A recurring topic that we are continuing to just jump headfirst into is the one thing that we would change about different characters in the comics. And again, when we're discussing these characters, to set the table here, we are talking about the comics in particular. So not necessarily the movie iterations. We may, of course, reference the movies because they are a helpful reference point. But in general, we are speaking primarily towards the source material. So
also,
yes,
if it has happened and we didn't know about it, we are not encyclopedias. Okay, so buzz off. And if we came up with it and they already did it, well, it was a great idea.
Clearly, it was our idea first.
Correct.
So let's just set the table straight there.
I agree with that.
Once again, we will do one character from DC, one character from Marvel. So just spreading all the love and all the joy. So without further ado, one thing you change, slight twist this time, rather than it being a single individual, we're going group version, so called the family event. Let's start at the DC side, Riles. Green Lanterns, because yes, there are multiples of them. Green Lanterns. What is one thing that you would change about the Green Lanterns in comics?
This was an easy one for me, to be honest.
Okay.
I think the fact that they have to charge is stupid.
Interesting.
So I would change that feature. Okay.
Rings no longer have to charge against the lantern.
Correct. Now, and I think it fully goes off of willpower.
Okay.
Because I think it would be really interesting to watch Green Lanterns get into a fight. Let's say there's some B tier Green Lantern going up against, we'll just say Sinestro, for instance, right?
Right.
I would like the idea, instead of him losing the ring because Sinestro kills him, he lost the willpower to fight.
Sure.
And therefore, because he has zero willpower, the ring's like, oh,
goodbye.
Exactly.
You're toast.
Because first of all, how badass would it be for a villain to come in and pummel like a Hal Jordan so bad that he no longer has any willpower.
Right.
He's just defeated.
Just gets psyched out.
Correct. Defeated mentally, emotionally, physically, to the point where he's like, I can't win this fight no matter what. Willpower hits zero. It's like, oh. And it either just disappears completely off the ring or finds a different host that has willpower available to it. So it's almost like feeding off the energy of the emotional. Because the fact that you just have to hit it with the lantern, don't get me wrong. The oath is badass. Okay?
The oath is great.
But use the oath right before you're going to get into a fight or right before you're about to finish it.
Sure.
Because that's where it hits in and you're like, oh, this is epic, right? They're about to die and then they start saying the oath and that gives them the willpower to continue.
Sure.
And it's a self-recharge in that sense.
Interesting. Yeah.
But just the fact that they have to poke at the lantern themselves and be like, oh, it's done. I just feel like it's silly.
It's not doing it for you. It's not doing it for you.
And back in the day, it was once a day, and then because I did my research on this, before we did this,
nice.
And now it's just it's not specific when it runs out of battery, right? But I feel like it also promotes this idea that you also need to be mentally well over just physically well to be a Green Lantern, right?
Well, especially with the color spectrum,
right?
And what I mean by that. Okay, for those of you that maybe have not read the Green Lantern comics, especially of late, because this is within the last 10 or 15 years that this developed, where you have Green Lanterns who are drawing their strength from the power of will. You have the Yellow Lanterns, which are drawing their strength from the power of fear. Then you have an additional 5 Lantern Corps that are drawing their strengths for their respective power rings through other I'm just going to call them topics on the emotional spectrum. So you've got, we already said, will, fear, rage, avarice, which is just a fancy word for greed, which is kind of an odd one. There's hope, love, and gosh darn it, what is the 7th one? Man, I thought I was going to go the distance.
It's the Indigo Core, and it is...
I think that's the hope. I think Indigo is...
No, that's blue.
You're right, blue is hope.
Indigo is... because they speak an entirely different language than nobody else. And I want to say it's integrity, but that sounds...
Compassion.
There you go.
Compassion. There we go.
Integrity.
It's actually a good guess.
It's not terrible. You know what?
It's actually a good guess. And then, of course, you've got the Black Lantern Corps of Death, the White Lantern Corps of Life, but it's a little bit on the extreme side in both regards. So I do like the concept that you're proposing of, hey, have the member of that corps stronger or more sincere their draw and attachment is to that particular aspect of the emotional spectrum, the more powerful they will be.
Well, and we've seen it be overcharged before.
Yep.
Like that's happened frequently where it's like, oh, Green Lantern, 200%. And it's like, oh, of course he just did that, right? But like, because Hal Jordan's
quite the plot.
Right. Hal Jordan's made his own ring from his own willpower. So he's probably like the ideal Green Lantern in the sense of he just has an endless supply of willpower. But I also like that idea for all the other emotions too, because imagine if like you're going up against Atrocitus and you just get to make him laugh.
Sure.
And he just loses the ring.
Sure.
Because he's just no longer angry.
Right.
Like I feel like it just in a weird way, it gives you these different tactics of just getting them off the emotion they're feeding off of.
Yep.
And using that to your advantage instead.
Yeah.
Right. So I think the opportunities for more creative wins per se, depending on the emotion at hand, right?
Right.
Is what really interests me in that aspect. So I would get rid of charging entirely.
Yeah, and I think you could totally repurpose the lanterns as well, because two things that are important. You have to keep the lanterns because otherwise it's just the greens. So we do want the Green Lanterns, but maybe it's just and part of the purpose of the lanterns themselves are to not just recharge the ring, but they're recharging the ring because they are tethered back to the home base of Oa, the planet Oa for the Green Lanterns. And for every other Lantern Corps, they have their own, again, appropriately colored lanterns, home base, so on and so forth. But maybe that's all that it needs to be is like, hey, whether it's once a day or set whatever the time frame is, the ring needs to be reconnected to the lantern, not for the sake of a recharge like a battery, but just a reconnection to maintain just a tether. That makes sense?
Yeah, so I wouldn't even do that.
0 to 10. I think you got to keep the lanterns involved somehow.
I agree with you. Yeah. I just don't want it attached to the power of the ring itself. So I don't know what it would look like.
Okay. Still works.
I would like it to be something entirely separate. So if it's just
charger.
Right. If it's just strictly like a communication device, or maybe it's like a beacon essentially, where it's like this sector is covered by this Green Lantern or something like that. Or it's in charge of the willpower of the entire planet, maybe. Something like that. You just need to repurpose it.
Fair enough.
So
I like that.
I just don't like it attached to the ring specifically.
Yep.
But I agree. The lanterns are cool. Don't get rid of the physical lantern. They just need to figure out a different purpose for said lantern.
Makes a lot of sense. Love it. Okay. Good take. Solid take. My take on the Green Lanterns is less is more. And specifically, I mean less humans. There are too many human beings that have become Green Lanterns. And I'm not hating on any one or two particular Green Lanterns here. The reason this flummoxes me is that in the Green Lantern lore, okay, and this is the whole paradigm of if you're a fictional story, you're going to set some fictional rules, you got to follow the fictional rules. Here's the rules in the Green Lantern, okay? There are 2 lanterns per sector. Earth, for example, is sector 2814, right? So you've got, now it's part of sector 2814. It's not only Earth. So Hal Jordan, when he becomes a Green Lantern, is the first human being to be part of the Green Lantern Corps. And it's this big deal, right? Because Earthlings aren't highly regarded for their robustness, for being particularly renowned in terms of willpower. And so the fact that Hal Jordan climbs the ranks so rapidly is fairly remarkable. Well, it becomes a lot less remarkable after Hal Jordan, Guy Gardner, John Stewart, Kyle Rayner. There's 2 other characters in the New 52, Baz, and I forget the gal's name.
There is Kyle Rayner. There is Simon Baz, Jessica Cruz.
There it is, Jessica Cruz. That was the one I couldn't remember. And again, not picking on any one of these, but it's a bit ridiculous to first tell us that there are only 2 Green Lanterns assigned to each sector. It's like, excuse me, that's several humans right out of the gate, and that's certainly more than 2. And where are we assigning them again? Oh, I'm sorry. They actually all end up guarding Earth at one point in time. And there's some fudging of the rules here that happens where Hal Jordan is evidently no longer a Green Lantern. Therefore, it creates a gap for Simon Baz or Jessica Cruz to step into. But the point is, it's become a watered down result. Okay. Part of what makes the Green Lantern Corps so great is that it encompasses and represents almost the entire known universe. In other words, you have species and individuals from everywhere with all different shapes, sizes, backgrounds. Leaning into that is one of the best things that Jeff Johns did with his Green Lantern run as far as fleshing out the different species that are represented in the Corps. And yet he also simultaneously just brought more and more humans into the mix. It's just, you got to follow your own rules. Less of the humans, please. Just less. Let's do that. So that's my take.
Well, to jump on that too, I just Googled it because I was curious. How many planets are in this sector? Mm-hmm. There are 34 planets. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Funny.
What are the odds that all of them are human?
Right.
Little to none. So correct. Why don't you have like a Martian or something else, right? Mm-hmm. Or to see, we talked about this last pod with the Flash and how there's so many Flashes.
Yes.
Why not with the Green Lanterns have Hal Jordan and John? At this point, Hal Jordan and John Stewart should not be in charge of the sector. They should be their own.
Right.
They should almost act as the Guardians or be on some council of higher power because they have done so much and are trailblazers for
they're not Green Lanterns around anymore.
Right. Yep. So that leaves you Guy, Kyle, and personally Kyle has even evolved out of that. So you got Simon, Jessica, and Guy Gardner.
Yep.
So one of those 3 for sure should just be one of them.
Yeah.
Right. And then have the other one be a different alien from a different planet, whatever that may be.
Guy Gardner is the person that never gets promoted, you know.
Right.
She's just
perpetually
stuck in the same spot, always rubbing people the wrong way, never quite, he's really good at the job, but nobody is going, we have to promote him because he's done such a great job. There's always enough flaws there that you can latch onto and say, hey, we're going to keep you here for another beat, bud.
Well, and that's even been like that. See, and that's when they were talking about the new Green Lantern show coming out, how they're going to have Hal be the old.
Right.
Have that be Guy Gardner instead, right? And have Hal and John already be semi-established, however you want to do it, right?
Sure.
But, for me, I think it's crazy that there are 7, there's probably even more than the ones that we've listed at this point. Right? How come we haven't gotten...
It's expanded so rapidly. In a very small period of years, it went from the handful to 2 handfuls.
Right.
Pretty quick.
So why... Here's the other thing. Why aren't you getting... Because we have a Star Sapphire from Earth. Mm-hmm. Why aren't we getting a Blue Lantern from Earth instead, right? One of them swaps and is now a Blue Lantern just to give us something different, right? I think Guy Gardner became a Red Lantern for a little while, and from what I understand, that went over really well for him. I like, and the character, right? But you also saw him dealing with his anger because that's one of his main things is he's just an angry dude on top of the willpower, right? So to have that variety of they were a Green Lantern at one point.
Yeah,
they can still thrive and succeed as a different color in a different Corps. You just
need, really silly.
You need more of a variety.
Yeah, you do,
and it's exactly what we talked about last pod, where it came down to legacy. Mm-hmm. You have to let these characters stand out on their own. I liked Kyle Rayner being a White Lantern.
Yep,
I liked that idea because he's the only one. He has to navigate all of these powers outside of it, right? So. There you go.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at.
Totally agree. Love that. All right. So that is the DC side. There's our take on the Green Lanterns. The one thing that we would change,